Everybody, I'm Lauren Albandian. I am the owner coordinator of NORWAC, the Northwest Astrological Conference. And the conference this year is scheduled for May 27th through the 31st. And we're all virtual this year, just like we were last year. And we are all very much hoping and having our fingers crossed that in 2022, we'll be able to meet in person once again, because really that's what NORWAC is all about, is people getting together, having fun and learning about astrology. And today I am talking with Matthew Ouimet. I was just trying to remember, Matthew, when did we meet? You were living in Seattle, going to the university. What year was that? 90?
We met in, I believe it was September or August of 1989.
Was it that? It was the 80s?
Yes, it was the late 80s.
I was thinking it had to be the 90s, but I guess we were in the Abracadabra.
Well,
okay.
That's because I was in graduate school for so damn long, but it took me 10 years to get my PhD. So, or actually, eight and a half to be fair. So,
well, let me tell you folks a little bit about Matthew. He's a second generation astrologer like myself. He is a consulting astrologer with 40 years experience specializing in a blend of modern, psychological, and traditional astrology. He is a highest honors graduate of the Noel Till master's level course in astrological consulting and has certifications in Hellenistic and horary astrology from Chris Brennan and Alfie Lavoie, respectively. Matthew's client work and teaching explore the convergence of traditional astrological techniques and modern development psychology. Let me finish the sentence. Looking closely at how character and events, nature and nurture manifest in the horoscope. He lives in Northern Virginia, not far from Washington, D.C., and the Appalachian Mountains. Do you go hiking up there?
I do. Love it up there.
Just so beautiful. So very different than the West Coast. Mountains,
not as much as you might think, actually. I've often said that if you can't live in Seattle, Virginia is a really nice second best.
Well, it's where my ancestors landed in the U.S. from my mother's side, from England, Scotland, was Goochland County, Virginia, oddly enough, in the 1600s. Yeah.
Dang.
So, there you go. Some little bit about myself and my mother.
You all have been here a while.
Yeah, didn't even know it. I thought, certainly not. I've got ancestors who fought in the American Revolution and then every single war probably since.
You should have joined the DAR.
No, it's not my style. Captains in the American Revolution.
Wow.
One of them, I think it's my fourth or fifth great grandfather, Daniel Scott, was married to a Poindexter, and they were big in the American Revolution. Anyway, he received a commendation posthumously from President Bush, oddly enough. So there you go. Yeah. Anyway,
that's amazing.
That's a whole nother story about my history and not what we're here for.
Yeah.
So Matthew is doing his very first lecture at NORWAC this year. Are you excited?
I am absolutely thrilled, Laura, because, when I was still in Seattle with you, I was a room monitor at NORWAC
right.
in the early 90s. So for me, this is very much coming home. Those were my very first astrology conferences that I ever attended. And so now coming back as a speaker, I can't even tell you how exciting that is.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. Thank you so much. So you are going to be lecturing on Saturday, May 29th. And the lecture topic and title is House Rulership and Other Secrets of Solar Arc Analysis. Now, solar arc analysis really comes from the Noel Till work that you did for so many years, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Noel quite literally wrote the book on solar arcs, and Frank Clifford has actually written a really good book on the subject since then as well. But I think Noel's remains kind of the Bible on the subject, and certainly his school has incorporated solar arcs to a degree I think that is pretty unique, and I hope to bring a lot of the the tips and tricks of the trade and my own experience in using them with clients to the lecture.
So for those who are listening who might not know what a solar arc is, it's a type of progression. How is a solar arc different from, say, our normal kind of average use of progressions, which is called the secondary progression? What's a solar arc progression?
So a solar arc is all of these secondary progressions and solar arcs are all part of a continuum that began in the Hellenistic period with what were called distributions through the bounds, or what eventually came to be known as primary directions. These are different from transits, and they're also different from things like annual profections or progressed lunar phases and things like that, which go through cycles. In the course of your life, you experience multiple transits of multiple Saturn returns. You might experience, well, every 2 years you experience Mars going through the entire chart. Every 12 years you experience the same profection cycle in annual profections. And every 29 years or so, 28 years, you experience the same progressed moon phases. However, in this case, with distributions through the bounds at first, and then primary directions, and now solar arc directions, and in fact, secondary progressions fall in this as well. You really only experience these once in your life. The progressed moon is different, obviously, because the progressed moon you'll get every 29 years, but for every other progression, you'll only have it once in your life. And it's the same thing with these. So what these are, it's kind of like if transits and annual profections and the like are about understanding the cycles in your life, these are actually about understanding the turning point events of your life, the unique once in a lifetime events that have made you who you are. And this is one of the great things about the practice of this technique in the Till School is Noel understood, I think, or at least taught chart synthesis better than anyone I ever met. And part of his process of synthesis was to look back. He called solar arcs the history's greatest predictive method. And I think that they are also history's greatest post-dictive method. This is a term I actually first heard from Rick Levine, but it refers to looking back in the life to see what has happened that has led up to or created the I guess Frank Clifford calls them the internal scripts, or the Noel talks about the developmental processes, the defensive structures that we develop over time, and how all of these events come together to make you the person that you are. And the style of astrology that I practice, I like to call it real world astrology. And in fact, my website is realworldastrology.com. And it's all about the idea of incorporating what is best from the past with the traditional methods, as well as current astrology. Mm-hmm. And there's this division that a lot of people see between traditional astrology and modern astrology, as if modern astrology is about character and traditional astrology is about like prediction and all that kind of thing. The truth is that anyone who has ever done 10 minutes in the Till School will recognize that prediction and understanding of events in a person's life is central to an understanding of who you are and how you became the person you are. It's like developmental psychology is about nature and nurture coming together. Your nature is the person that you came into the world as, and the nurture is the things that happen to you. Well, solar arcs show the nurture component of how you became who you are. And if you can understand how those events shaped you in the past, you can understand, in effect, the situation you find yourself in, and then where you're going. It's very much like when I was teaching at the university, back when I was still living in Seattle with you. I was constantly trying to teach this to my history students, that if you want to understand the current situation, you have to understand what preceded it. And then you can look forward and project into the future. And that's what solar arcs allow you to do better than any technique that I've ever seen.
So how are you bringing then house rulers and solar arc together? Or are they just looking at different types of techniques to use?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an interesting, there's a lot of people that use, well, first of all, let me take a step back. Noel's understanding of chart synthesis that I referenced earlier hinged on this idea that house rulers were actually oftentimes more important than the planets placed in the houses themselves. So for like the last, let's say 400 years, since Morin de Villefranche, I think, wrote Astrologica Gallica, where he was like, no, the planets in the houses are the most important thing, and they totally outweigh the house rulers, etc. There has been this focus on planets in houses. What Noel did with his, now he didn't ignore, of course, this idea of planets and houses, but he talked about the network of tension that underlies an individual, that creates sort of a blueprint for how they work, or like a spider web, so that if you pluck this over here moves, and it's all knit together very carefully. So if you understand how things like solar arcs are having an effect over here on this planet, it's not simply the planet or the house that it is located in where that is occurring, but it's also the houses that it rules, as well as, and this is a point that an awful lot of people don't look at all, it's also the houses that are ruled by the arcing planet itself. This is an idea that goes back, and this is one of the topics that I want to address in my lecture, because even within the Till School itself, there's not a lot of people who look at this question of the ruler of the arcing planet. This was very common to look at in primary directions and in distributions through the bounds. And Bernadette Brady actually talks at some length about doing this with transits as well. Looking at the houses that the transiting planet rules. But again, it hasn't been applied very widely. Noel references it in passing in his book, but even he didn't really use it to any great degree. But I have found in my own client work and in a lot of the mundane stuff that I've done with it, that it works brilliantly. And so I want to show people the results of some of that research that I've done and some of how I've used it in client work. And so that's a kind of an interesting angle that not a lot of people are using.
Well, I think everybody will derive a great deal of information from your lecture if you're into solar arcs. Certainly looking at house rulers from a multiplicity of levels. You all can go to norwac.net. That's www.norwac.net. You'll find the schedule there. That you can scroll through that, look at the schedule itself. The speakers are listed. You can register there. You can add extra workshops. NORWAC this year will be its 37th year in existence. We're very excited. Thank you very much, Matthew, for joining me today and sharing your lecture with us.
Thank you very much, Laura. And I can't wait for this to be back in Seattle, because the last time I saw you, we went for like an hours-long meander through Seattle, and I can't wait to do that again.
Awesome. Looking